Just a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Xiahna. I'm from California, so I live about 45 minutes to an hour away from San Francisco. Um, like Luke and his colleagues, I love to travel too. I've been to many different places in the US and I've been to Latin America. Um, After the pandemic is over, I hope to travel more. I'm newer to teaching English, but I've been involved in a lot of volunteer programs for education. So I'm really excited to start this new field of teaching. So we can get started with the presentation. I'll share my screen. And I just want to definitely put it out there. If at any point during the presentation you have any questions or comments, I can't see you, so please feel free to let me know. And throughout the presentation as well, there's opportunities to share your thoughts and to share your opinions. So, as mentioned, this lesson is English for travel, specifically on culture, customs, and etiquette. Now, whenever you're traveling to another place, especially when you don't speak the language or you're newer to the language, there's certain things that are important to know and communicate, whether that be hospitality arrangements, booking a hotel, being able to read signs in an airport, street signs, ordering food. And something that is really important whenever you're traveling is to know the culture of where you're going to. And so today we're specifically going to look at American culture. Now, if you're interested in learning about the culture in the UK or Australia or another English-speaking country, I really encourage you to do your own research and look that up because it's something that's really interesting and good to know.
Okay,
So,
it's still loading. So
oh, okay, let me redo it then.
yeah, now we can see it.
Okay. Can you see it now?
When you pressed present and it just say loading. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let me see.
I got your PDF. So
Okay, I'll use the PDF then.
all right.
Sorry about that, everyone.
No
I'll access
problem.
the
No problem.
PDF.
Happens. Yeah, take your time.
Okay. Okay, is that better?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's get started on a quick overview of the United States. So I had this come up in one of my tutoring sessions with a student on all the different ways you can refer to the United States. So the US, the USA, the United States, America, all these names are correct. Usually, if I'm talking about this country, I just say the US. So the population is over 331 million people. And interestingly, on a federal level, there's actually no official language in the United States, but the de facto language or the language that is commonly spoken is English. But even more so, there are people from many different backgrounds and countries who live here. So there are at least 350 languages other than English that are spoken by people in the United States. So, for example, where I live, there are many Spanish speakers, also Chinese, Tagalog, Punjabi, just to name a few. So there's a wide variety of cultural influences, which we'll get into a little later. Some famous cities in the US: New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Houston. But all across the country, you don't have to go to a city to be able to see some beautiful sights. There's a lot of really fun and interesting places to visit in the United States. So, what is culture? Culture can be something a little hard to define, but in doing some research, I really liked this quote from anthropologist Christina De Rossi. And she explains how culture encompasses religion, food, what we wear, how we wear it, our language, marriage, music, what we believe is right or wrong, how we sit at the table, how we greet visitors, how we behave with loved ones, and a million other things. So I think this is a good all-around overview of what culture means. It's really our belief system and how where we live influences what we think is right or wrong, how we do things, how we interact with others. So this is something that we can keep in mind when considering other cultures. So I'd like to ask this question. When traveling to another country, what are the benefits of learning about its culture and customs? Any thoughts or opinions? How can this be useful to think about the culture before you go or to learn about it?
Okay, to me, it makes me think. Try to look at things in a different perspective, because you see all the differences, and they make you think.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Definitely. And something that I think makes sense is it really shows respect for the people in the country in which you are going to. And it also can help you to feel more comfortable and confident when you're there interacting with people. So it's really a good idea before you travel to look at the culture and to do some research about it. So, to begin with, there are different cultural regions in the United States. And before I go over this, observers will definitely recognize that these are just sort of a general idea of what of the values people from these regions may have. It does not necessarily define each individual who lives in these regions. And so I'd like to begin with the West. So I am from the West, specifically the West Coast. People here have a more relaxed pace of life. Many people enjoy nature and the outdoors, especially in California. There's a wide range of things you can do when it comes to being in the outdoors. Many people enjoy hiking and doing things like that, going to the beach. The Midwest, it's often referred to as America's breadbasket because of the farming done there, especially with the wheat crop. So there's small towns, farming communities, but there's also big cities such as Chicago is in the Midwest. Now, in the South, there's a lot of emphasis on family, religion. People usually have more conservative values, and there's a strong sense of community in the South. People from the southern part of the US are often known for their southern hospitality. So that means they're warm, welcoming nature, so very friendly. Now, in the Northeast, famous for a lot of its big cities like New York and Boston. Um, Northeast, it's more fast-paced, industrialized, and something I really appreciate about this region of the U.S. is that there's a lot of history there, and there's a lot of historically significant sites you can visit, such as the Lincoln Memorial or the White House or the Liberty Bell. So in each of these areas, I have been to states in each of these regions, and everyone I have met in each of these regions have been very friendly, and there's a lot of exciting things you can do in each part of the United States. But it's good to recognize, just like with any other country, even in different areas, people may have different values or ideals. But overall, like I said, people are friendly, and there's a lot of exciting things to do. So any questions about that?
I think this cultural map is very helpful for people outside the United States.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And like I said before, and observers who are watching, who are from the United States will know this, that this does not necessarily reflect every person who lives here. So not everyone in California loves to hike. Not everyone in the Northeast lives in a big city. But it is helpful, especially if you've never been to the United States before. And when planning where you might want to go and where you might want to visit in the US. So on a larger scale, American culture, the United States is very culturally diverse. And I think that's what makes part of it an exciting part of living here, that there's influences from all over the world. So for example, I'm very active in my congregation here in my town. And in my congregation, there's people from Sierra Leone, Belize, the Philippines, El Salvador, Fiji, and that's just in my little suburb of San Francisco. And so it's really exciting to live in a place with people from different races, nationalities, and so this really influences the broad variety of American culture. So food, I think food is a very important part of every culture around the world. And when people think of American food, the first thing that may come to mind is fast food, food that is fried or unhealthy. And to a certain extent, this can be true. But there's a lot more to American food than just McDonald's or Taco Bell. So, as mentioned before, because of the cultural diversity, this is also reflected in the food here. So, there's influences from Europe, Latin America, Africa, Asia, really all around the world. So, for example, in my town, if you're going out to eat, you might go to a Vietnamese restaurant or an Indian restaurant or a classic American diner or a Mexican restaurant. So Americans really like to try new things and try new foods. And although the food may not be an exact reflection of how it is prepared in its country of origin, it is really cool to be able to experience different cultures in the way of food. And in more recent times, many Americans are becoming more conscious of what's in their food. So, organic food, locally grown ingredients, those are becoming really more popular with Americans. As I had to include coffee because Americans love their coffee. Um, on the West Coast, I know Starbucks is really big, and I think in the East, Dunkin' Donuts are everywhere. So Americans really love their coffee. So just to get an idea of the diversity of food here, these are some of my favorite foods or places to go to eat. So there's a Vietnamese restaurant right around the corner from my house where I love vermicelli bowls, and it's so good. And also, being from California, I love In-N-Out Burger. So yes, In-N-Out is fast food, but it's a slightly higher quality of fast food than typical fast food places. If you ever travel to the West Coast, of the United States, I recommend going to In-N-Out. My family and I also really love Indian food, and Starbucks, as mentioned before, coffee is really good. So this is just an example of the variety you can get while in the United States. And it's beyond just hamburgers and hot dogs and pizza. So that's something I really appreciate. And I definitely recommend trying different things if you ever choose to come here. So when it comes to etiquette in the US, dinner is typically the largest. In general, Americans don't share meals when going out to restaurants. Usually people will order their own plate or their own dish. Now, there's exceptions to this if I'm going out with my family or if I'm eating at home, we'll have plates of different foods, pass them around and share. But if you're going out with friends to a restaurant, typically you'll order your own plate, your own meal. Also, something that's very different here in the US than in many other countries is that tipping is customary. And this is because waiters have very low wages, and so they really rely on tipping. So, a good rule of thumb, depending on where you are, is 15 to 20% as a tip. And this can change depending on how well you thought the service was. So if you thought a waiter did a really good job, they're really friendly and awesome, you might give them a bigger tip. If you thought a waiter wasn't very good, you might give them a lower tip. And when you're going to fast food restaurants such as McDonald's or In-N-Out, tipping is not required. They'll usually have something called a tip jar by the cash register where you could put $1 or a few coins if you wanted to, but it's definitely not expected when you're at fast food places. So when taking into consideration things like restaurant or eating etiquette, I found this really interesting experience of a student from India who came here to go to university. And he said that eating etiquette among friends is different here. In the US, friends usually eat their own meals and rarely share water bottles or cups, whereas in India, you could just pick up your friend's water bottle and drink from it or eat from his or her plate. So I found this very interesting, and I'm sure you will too. And it's interesting to see how things such as eating etiquette are different in different parts of the world. So things like this are important to recognize. But it just also just goes to show the beauty of culture and how there's different things we can take from each one. But definitely here in the US, in relation to this, people have their own meals. Generally, you wouldn't eat from a friend's plate or drink from his glass. So I'd like to ask you, what food is very popular in your country, or what different customs do you have for eating or etiquette?
So our staple is the rice and the noodles.
I love noodles, so I would love to try that if I ever came to Taiwan.
Yeah, and people say Taiwanese cuisine is very good. I don't know. So what do you think? It depends on which region you are talking about. Let me see. Mm, yes, but I have one question for you. So
Yeah, yeah.
in San Francisco, is it easy to find restaurants for vegans? I was in the Midwest. It's so hard for me to find a vegetarian restaurant. So I ate cucumbers a lot.
I would give that a definite yes.
Yeah.
I think you would definitely be able to find vegan or vegetarian restaurants in San Francisco. I think especially in this area, people are, whether or not it's for health, people are into different lifestyles, even with eating, such as being vegan or gluten-free or vegetarian. I definitely think that you could find a vegan restaurant in San Francisco. Yes, for
Oh,
sure.
good to know that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So sports are also a really big part of American culture. Um, Someone might have recognized baseball before as being the number one most popular sport here, but I would definitely say that football is becoming the most popular sport. Just to give you an idea, last year for the Super Bowl, there was an estimated 99.9 million viewers. So the Super Bowl this year is coming up next month. It's a really big event. Watching it on the TV, even if your team is not playing, many Americans tune in for the Super Bowl. But baseball and basketball are also very popular sports to watch or to go to a game. Of course, we know right now with the pandemic, this might not totally be possible. Hockey as well. Where I live, hockey isn't very popular, but I know that in other parts of the country, hockey is a very popular sport to watch. So now clothing, an interesting one, especially American fashion and style of dress. People may think of American clothing as being jeans and sneakers, baseball caps, or even cowboy boots. And this can really depend on what part of the country you live in. So, where I live, you probably will not see someone wearing cowboy boots, but in other parts of the country, I'm sure there's places where everyone wears cowboy boots. One thing I can say definitely that jeans are a very popular style among Americans. No matter what social status or position a person has, pretty much everybody at some point wears jeans. Another thing that people recognize about Americans is that many dress very casually. And this is not to say that all Americans dress casually, but it's something that might shock some people who come to the United States to see how some people dress. Um, so that is something that you should be aware of, especially if you come from a culture where it's more conservative. And so this goes into another international student from the Caribbean, and I'll paraphrase it. Basically, he brought out how attending church in the United States, it was the first time he had seen someone wear slippers and shorts, and that he would have never seen that in his home country. So, again, this is not to say that all Americans wear pajamas to church, but this is definitely something that you could see. But there are still many who dress up to go to church and dress formally. So there are many holidays and significant events and dates in the United States. Here are just a few of them. I would definitely say that 4th of July, New Year's, Thanksgiving, Christmas, these are probably the most popular holidays. I personally don't celebrate any holidays, but they are very popular in the United States, and people take the time to enjoy time with family and go on vacation and things like that. So now I'd like to ask you, what sports, holidays, or clothing styles are popular in your country? So you don't have to name all of them, but
yeah, before I answer this question, I think today's presentation is also good for people who are going to teach one-on-one tutoring sessions. They're very good topics for students here. Yeah, so maybe pick a few slides, and then it would be good for 1 hour tutoring session. So we do not watch American football, not popular here. And the most popular would be baseball, right? Baseball and basketball. So if you ask students here, well, what is their favorite sport? Maybe you get basketball, baseball a lot.
okay.
Badminton, ping pong, swimming, tennis. What else? And holidays, of course, the Chinese New Year and the Moon Festival, the Ghost Month, Ghost Festival. It's like Halloween.
Oh, okay.
And Dragon Boat Festival. That day, you see a lot of dragon boat races on TV. What else?
中国新年哦，
有啊，Chinese New Year，还有
劳动节，我们也有那个劳工放假啊。
Okay, yeah. Or clothing. Yeah, people dress casual as well, but for office workers, I think they are required to dress up, wear formal clothes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And here, when it comes to business attire, I didn't cover that in the presentation, but it can really change depending on the business and the company you work for, where it can range from more casual dress to more formal dress. An example of that was I had a friend who went to a business convention in Texas, and he showed up to the business lunch in what he thought was not too casual, but not dressy, just nice jeans and a nice button up. And his colleagues were dressed in flip-flops, shorts, and t-shirts. So there's a wide range of what people may consider appropriate dress. So it's an interesting thing. Some core values in American culture are individualism, equality, informality, and directness. So we can take some time to discuss exactly what these things mean. So in an individual culture, people tend to see themselves more as individuals and not so reliant or intertwined into a group. In collective cultures, people are more dependent on family. Family ties are very strong. And while family is important in American culture, Americans usually like to see themselves as individuals. For example, within a few years of finishing high school or college, they're expected to eventually live on their own. Another one is equality. Like what I discussed before, not everyone has these values as strongly as I cover it. I don't know how to explain this correctly. Just because equality is an important part of American culture. So, for example, genders are considered equal. And even in the workplace, you'll see people refer to each other by their first name, even superiors between a boss. But this is not something you'll necessarily always see, maybe in the workplace. But it is a core American value, equality. Informality, which we discussed a little bit. Many people take note of Americans' informality in behavior, speech, or dress, and it can come across as a little surprising, as mentioned before with the first names. Americans are also very direct in communication. In indirect cultures, people may avoid talking about difficult or contentious issues, and the listener has to interpret the meaning of what is being said based on the person's tone of voice or posture, things like that. When speaking with an American, yes means yes, no means no. Things are explained in a way and generally in which you can perceive the full meaning simply on what is being said and not necessarily on tone of voice, things like that. So this can vary different cultures, and it does not necessarily mean that an indirect culture is better than a direct culture or individualism is better than a collective culture. But it is important when you go somewhere, especially if you're going to be communicating with others, to recognize what is the standard for the values that the people have there. So how are some of these values similar to or different from your culture? Are there any things any of these things that you see are the same or completely different?
I think in Taiwan, we have stronger family ties, but I don't like that. I like to be alone. I think directness, yeah. We would say things more politely. We won't be so straightforward when we discuss things. So some Americans, when they come to Taiwan, they cannot read between the lines. They do not get what we try to tell them because we want to be polite. We don't not want to be very rude or very direct, straightforward. So it creates some communication problems if you don't know the different cultural differences. Yeah, I got that a lot. I've seen so many people misunderstandings because of their cultural backgrounds. Yeah.
Yes, I can definitely understand that, and I think that's why it's so important to be aware of each other's culture, especially when working in an international field where you're dealing with people in different cultures and visiting another place, visiting another country.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And it can help smooth over some misunderstandings, especially if you're aware before of different things like that. Okay. So greetings between Americans are usually informal. As mentioned before, people usually introduce themselves by their first name, and a common way of greeting someone is just asking, "How are you? How are you doing?" And when an American asks you, "How are you?" They're generally not asking for you to actually tell them all about how you're doing, which could be confusing to some if you are being asked, "How are you?" But a typical response if someone asks you, "How are you?" as a greeting would be, "Oh, I'm good. How are you?" Or "I'm fine. How are you?" And so when it comes to physical contact with family and friends, some may greet each other with a hug. And if you're in a business setting, a handshake would be appropriate. Something that's really important in American culture, especially when communicating with others, I think are facial expressions, smiling, eye contact. And in some cultures, eye contact can mean different things. But in American culture, it really shows that you're listening to the person. It shows that you're giving them respect by maintaining eye contact, and it really conveys warmth and sincerity. You may find yourself walking down the street, and if you pass someone, if you meet their eyes, you'll probably smile and nod. "How are you doing?" While doing research, I realized that in other cultures, talking to strangers in this way may not be so typical. So if you ever travel here, don't be surprised if you pass someone or you see someone you don't even know and they might smile at you or wave, things like that. So this connects with what I just said about eye contact meaning different things. This student from Pakistan explained how while in the US, eye contact is really important, in her country, different genders don't make a lot of eye contact. So I could definitely see how this could be uncomfortable and take some getting used to if you're from a culture in which people generally don't make eye contact. But here, it is something that is important and something you'll see a lot if you're talking with an American. So this just goes in again to different greetings. A more formal greeting would be hello. If I was saying hi to my friend, I would say hi, hey. Another one, what's up? Or how's it going? So these are more informal greetings. You might not want to use them in the workplace until you're more familiar with people or if it's that's the company culture. But this is sort of an explanation of different ways to greet people in the United States. So any questions on any of this?
I want observers to know that Taiwanese students avoid eye contact, and please don't think they are impolite. They are just shy, and in our society, in Pakistan, different genders do not make a lot of eye contact when they are talking to each other. And also, we have a expression. Whenever we greet someone, we say, "Have you eaten something?" They don't know if you have eaten or not. They just want to say hi, you know. So, but it's very strange, right? Have you eaten something yet?
I like that.
But they don't care your answer, you know. They don't care about your answer. They just, "Oh, okay, hello, hi," and yeah, just a way of greeting. Just like you say, "How are you?" You just, "Okay, I'm good." They don't expect your answer to be very specific.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's true. Yeah, I think that eye contact is one that's very important to be aware of, no matter what culture you are, to recognize that in some cultures, people may not feel comfortable giving eye contact or they don't give eye contact. So on both sides of the spectrum, acknowledging that there's a difference and that's okay. Just remembering that some people don't feel comfortable or here, oh, it's normal. And like I said, this is so interesting to me, the way the customs and etiquette in different countries, and I think it's something that everyone should strive to be aware of, and it really helps you to understand people in different places. So I think we're about finished, or we're getting close to wrapping up. So I'll stop sharing. And if there's any general questions, I'm more than happy to give an answer. But thank you so much. That was really great.
You're not going to finish everything. Wow, it's interesting, and they are good topics for your tutoring sessions. I mean, observers, you can pick the sports or holiday or eating etiquette or different types of cuisine, and then after your presentation, ask them a few questions, have them come up with something so you can get them to talk in English. It's very interesting, and sometimes you take it for granted, and if people do not act according to your expectations, you get upset. So I think it's very helpful when you learn learn more about different cultural differences, and it will make you a more tolerant, better person because you understand their backgrounds, their different ideas about family or politics or food. Yeah, so it's a very good topic for tutoring sessions or for other classes. Yeah.
I agree, definitely. You could definitely expand on each one to create a whole lesson out of it. Yeah.
This is like an overview, so I will share your video with a lot of my friends, and if they find this very helpful, and we will have more classes like this in the future. Thank you
Awesome.
so
Sounds
much
good.
for your presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you tomorrow. I mean, observers. So
Yes, thank you.
then I will see you Friday night.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we are going to eat lunch.
Enjoy.
Okay, bye.
Bye.